Hello. I hope everybody's
Hello.
as super pumped as I am. If you've never been to a Poster House event before, I'm Angelina, and I am the Chief Curator at Poster House, which is the first museum in the United States dedicated to the art and history of the poster. And tonight I am joined by who I believe to be the most important letterpress printer alive. That is Amos Kennedy. He's based in Detroit, and his work can't really be contained in a simple definition. I mean, I've seen pieces by him that present quotes from like famous quotes, biblical quotes, quotes from friends. I've seen pieces that are so layered that you go through moments of a person's life, like his Rosa Parks series. And I've seen pieces like the ones we currently have on view at the museum, which advertise a variety of events, many of which wouldn't even make the footnotes of a history book without being recorded in these posters. He's also creates nappygrams, which are a bit more confrontational, a bit more meaty, and there is no road Amos can't go down with his work, and that's why I love it so much. So rather than talk for him, I'm going to let this party get started. So I'm going to start with some questions for Amos that I've mapped out in advance, but if anyone has any during the event, please put them in the chat and I'll vocalize them to him. This is going to be a night where he does most of the talking. And please choose the all panelists and attendees option at the bottom in the chat so that everyone can see your comments and questions, not just me. So Amos, first and foremost, what is letterpress and why did you choose it?
Letterpress printing, excuse me, letterpress printing is a form of relief printing, and that means you're printing off of the surface of something. And what distinguishes it from, say, wood cuts or linoleum cuts or wood engravings is that letterpress is designed primarily to print letters. And it was a type of printing that was developed by Johann Gutenberg about 500 years ago. And that is what it is. It's just a form of relief printing. But it deals primarily with text. Yeah. And how did I get into it? Well, it all started one cold December night back in 1949. Yeah, my father got lucky. and 9 months later, here I was. Okay, but fast forward, in my 20s, I actually studied calligraphy for a little while, and actually in the Washington, D.C. area. The Department of Agriculture at one time had a huge educational program. So they had a calligraphy class on a Saturday morning, and I took that and I got interested in calligraphy. But I never really, I would always make mistakes towards the end, and then I'd have to start all over again, and that was extremely discouraging. And so I really didn't practice it. And then in about 1988, I took my sons to Williamsburg, Virginia, and I saw a letterpress shop there because they have a reenactment. And I was fascinated by it, and I said, I want to do this. At least I want to try it. And when I got back to Chicago, I found a place called Artist Bookworks, which was a community book arts center, and they offered letterpress printing. And I went there and I took a course, and it was just like falling off a cliff. Everything's okay once you fall. And I've been falling from that cliff for the last 30 years.
So the technique that I see in a lot of your work is very layered. It's something that's very like distinctively you. Like if you see an Amos poster, you know it's an Amos poster. How did you come up with that style?
I came up with that style kind of accidental. Traditionally, when you look at letterpress printing, a lot of it has gone through the press more than one time, but they keep each color very distinct in their own area for registration and that sort of thing. But you can find examples where people printed over kind of randomly. But what happened in all seriousness was I had a commission and I was going to do a border in words. And I misspelled one of the words in the border, and I didn't have any more paper. And so I just said, I'll just print over that until you can't see the mistake. And I kind of liked that. I like the look of it. And so I continued to explore that. And as I got more into it, I began to understand how things come together. And so that became one of my signature looks, I guess you say, of letterpress printing, letterpress printing.
And since a lot of your pieces, including the one that I have in my house, are quotes from friends or proverbs, how do you decide which quotes you're going to be using or where you get them?
Well, I work in two different ways. And normally I'm doing something very large. So one is that I will say I want to do a series, say, on gardening. And then I will research quotations and proverbs about gardening. And then I would scale it down to maybe 10. And then I would do that series. So I would do, like altogether, I'd do 10 quotations in an addition of 100. And that's when I have a uniform theme to it. And then at other times, it's just that, I want to print some stuff. And then I have a list of proverbs, aphorisms, quotes people have given me. And I just go through and I just check off, like 10 and say, I'm going to print these 10. And, because I like them and I told someone I was going to print them 5 years ago, so I should do it today. And so I do that. But basically, it's just, I just collect and print as I have time. And it's just, I really absolutely love to print. And so it's like, this is what I really enjoy doing. So I love printing. And that's one reason why I print on chipboard, because the paper is not that expensive. Therefore, I can keep prices down. And it's just my, I have some external expenses, utilities, things of that nature. But my labor is like this is what I want to do. So it is labor, but it isn't laborious. It isn't, I don't get discouraged. I don't get down. It's like, oh yeah, gotta go print.
Actually, can you talk a little bit about your evolution into chipboard? I know that you originally started off on that white coated stock, and then you moved into chipboard. I know this story, but I feel like people would like it.
Well, posters have been in the United States, in U.S. culture since the late 1880s. But traditionally, the posters would have been printed, especially starting in the 20th century, they would have been printed on white cardstock paper. And this is what you see if you look at Hatch, if you look at Tribune, if you look at Globe. They primarily use this coated white paper to print on. And when I started, I actually ordered paper, the same paper that Hatch uses, and they ordered it for me and let me pick it up. So on my way to Alabama, I stopped in and got a supply of paper, and that lasted me for about 2 or 3 months. And then I ran out of it. And also I didn't have any money, which was another problem. But I lived in this town, York, Alabama. And I was talking to a man there, and I said, yeah, I ran out of this paper that I normally print on. I was explaining what I do. And he said, well, I got some paper that's that thickness, but it's brown, it's not white. And I said, I'll print on it. And so he brought in a big supply of free paper. And if it's free, you can use it somewhere. And so and that's the only paper I had. So I started printing, and I was printing things for people in the area, and they were comfortable with the brown paper. And so I figured I would keep it because for me, it evokes the soil, the ruralness of a large swath of the United States of America, and also the South. And I wanted to keep things that, for me, identified with my Southern heritage.
We just got actually a question from Yos Marilyn. She wants to know, what is one word you'd use to describe your journey as an artist and why? It's like an SAT question, Yos Marilyn.
One word to describe: life. That's what that is. It's life. And I would say I'm living my life. I would say that I am fortunate that I discovered the talent that I have to share with the rest of the world, and I'm able to do it. I think that my journey is not unique to humankind, but there are barriers put up by society that will not allow us to obtain that, to take that journey, that we have to break down.
I know one of the early posters we have in our show that I'm really drawn to are the ones you created for Tees Lounge. Who were your first commissions? Was it mostly like friends that knew that you were printing who wanted you to do these posters for them, or how did you get commissions early on?
My first commission was with Emory University, and that's where I made that mistake. And that was my very first commission as a poster printer. And then after that, my commissions were basically local. My commissions came when I was in York. I was an artist in residence at a art center called the Coleman Art Center in York. No, the Coleman Contemporary Art Center. Yeah, in York, Alabama. And so I would do the posters for their events as an exchange for having a studio space. So for like 3 years, they gave me an apartment and a studio. So in exchange for printing, which I thought I was getting away with murder kind of. But, those were the first. And then I would just print things. The first thing I ever printed was for Tees Lounge. He was doing a fundraiser for a DJ who had a medical bill that needed to be paid. So I just did some posters announcing that event. And I handed him, I had never been to Tees Lounge, and there was this little guy standing out front. And I said, hey, here's some posters, Little did I know that was Mr. T, And over the years, Mr. T became a very good friend of mine and schooled me in a lot of stuff.
I believe he also told you that the ladies are not allowed to fight in the bathroom. Is that?
That is correct. So that is an act. What happened was I was out of town, and I came back and said, well, T, what's going on? He said, oh, the women were fighting in the bathroom last week, and they beat up the bouncer. Like, whoa, and then that coming Saturday, for some reason, I didn't go to Tees Lounge that Saturday. But when I saw him on that Monday, he said, hey, man, they were in there beating up on each other this weekend. And I said, well, I can go fix that. And he said, how? I said, I can make a poster. And Mr. T said, well, make it ladies, no fighting in the bathroom, because Mr. T uses the term ladies all the time. Ladies, no fighting in the bathroom. I said, I do that, Mr. T. And I went and I printed up about 20 of them. No, maybe about 50. And then he, it was like in the middle of the day, he got a staple gun. He stapled them all over the women's bathroom, on the front of the door to the stall, on the back of the door. So when they sitting there, they would see it too, and hey, no fighting in the bathroom after that.
Oh, really? It solved the problem?
It solved the problem. Then I went to a craft fair. And that I sold out of it because mothers would come up and buy them, because they would say, I need this, because apparently there's something about women and bathrooms that you all don't share them very well.
It's our secret fight club.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But if a woman had 2 daughters, she would walk away with that poster.
As someone with a sister, I identify with them.
Yeah.
Sarah just wrote a question. She wants to know, when you decided to fall off that printmaking cliff, was there a certain point when you started identifying yourself as an artist?
About 3 days ago.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so I know you've always said that you're a printer, not an artist.
Yeah.
3 days ago, now you're an artist?
Well, what has happened is that, I do consider myself a printer, but I've had this issue with art and artists since I was a small child. And then about 3 days ago, I realized that the issue wasn't with art and artists. The issue was with the elitism that this society has put upon it. We have artists everywhere. Everybody is an artist. Everybody creates. Everybody wants to make something of beauty. And so we are all artists. But in this civilization we live in, we've kind of said only these people are going to be artists. Not only that, but they can do like strange things. We say, well, that's an artist. They can be an artist and never make any money. And we say, that's a starving artist. That's a good artist. Like, no, nobody ever says, well, my mechanic's a starving mechanic, but artists can starve. Like, no, we can't. We die if we starve. And so recently I've just said, yes, I've kind of embraced the term art and artist. I made peace with it inside of myself. And so I still am a printer and I have a print shop, not a studio, but I do make art because all humans make art.
Wow, I mean, this is a very new development for me. I wouldn't have.
That's in 3 days.
3 days. This is new news. Now, maybe this has changed since you're now identifying as an artist. But when you're making pieces for yourself versus when you're working on a commission, do you treat those things differently, or do you approach both things the same way?
I approach both things the same way, and I tell people that really, I really don't know what I'm doing, but when I get there at the press, the moment and the energy that's generated in that moment makes things happen. I don't go in with a list of here's how I'm going to make this project. I don't go in with sketches that I'm going to work with. I just go in and I start. I have a list of words and I have the text. On my website, I say, give me the text and go home and pray, because I don't know what's going to happen. And the thing is that just because I think it's good, the client may not think it's good. And because I think it's bad, the client may be in love with it. So I do what I do in the moment I do it. And because I'm doing it in that moment, then all of the experiences I've had up to that moment informs what I'm doing. Yeah. So yeah, I just print. I like to put a lot of ink on paper and a lot of different colors.
Now, what's the difference between your regular Kennedy Prince umbrella and nappygrams? Since I know that a lot of people don't know it's a fine line, I feel.
Well, nappygrams were developed, came about when I was at Indiana University, because there were some issues that I did not feel were being properly addressed. And they are strictly a political statement. They are, you don't have to wonder, is this a political statement or is this not a political statement? It is definitely by term nappy, and then I have this little African drummer, I have all this tropes that you can't miss it as a political statement. So that's basically what nappygrams are. They are a more direct political statement, because I sincerely believe that everything I make is political in some way. And I don't know if political is the correct term, but everything I make reflects the world that I want to live in. Yeah.
Actually, Kaylin down in the chat wants to know how one gets a nappygram. I don't know these messages.
Well, how one gets a nappygram, it helps if you ask.
Ask and you shall receive? Is that?
Yeah. Well, I do not feel I should sell them. Mm-hmm. And so what I've done is that I graduated from Grambling College, now Grambling State University, and the library there has an emergency fund for students. So if people want a nappygram, I send them one, and then I send them an email saying, if you want to make a contribution to this, Grambling is a university that most of the students are first generation to go to school. So it is a very big deal. And, they need all the help they can get, because they don't have the big endowments. They don't have the massive football contracts and that sort of thing. And so if you want, you think, oh, $10 is better than no dollars. And, $10 contributions is 100. And that may be all a student needs to get by that semester. So basically, I just asked them to make a contribution. The other thing is that if you ask for a nappygram, I'll probably send you 4 or 5, maybe up to 10, so you can distribute them to other people.
Can you name that school one more time? Just some.
It's Grambling State University in Grambling, Louisiana.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ben in the chat wants to know about the ACPA. I actually have no idea what that is. He wants to know how it got started. What is it?
That is the Amalgamated Colored Printers Association.
Okay.
Yes, it got started because a little secret. There's not a lot of colored people doing letterpress printing. You know? Yeah. So Rick Griffith, who is a Black printer in Denver, Colorado, came to my shop for a visit, a couple of days. And during that time, we created the Amalgamated Colored Printers Association organization. He's basically taken over and is the administrator of it. But for the first 2 years, we did these big posters. We did one poster at Hamilton's Ways Goose that at that time, there was a massive meeting of Black printers, all three of us. If someone had dropped the bomb, all the Black printers in America would have been gone. Letterpress printers, you know, because all three of us were in one room. The other one is Ben Blunt. But since that time, the numbers have grown rapidly as letterpress printing becomes more popular in all the universities.
Wait, are they all men?
What's that?
Are all the Black printers men?
Well, at that time they were, but now there are a lot of women as normal. You know, if you take a look at letterpress printing, it is dominated by women, which should come as no shock since there's more women in the world than men. Yes. So technically everything should be done, you know, if it's by the numbers, you know, more women should be everywhere. The letterpress leads the way. We lead the way. Yeah.
And so we've covered nappygrams, we've covered Kennedy prints. Let's talk about the pile of bricks.
The pile of bricks. That is slowly not being a pile of bricks. But when I moved to Detroit in 2013, it was to set up my Forever Shop. And my Forever Shop is to be a place where everyone is welcome to come and try letterpress printing. Because I believe that the more experiences you have, the richer your life is, and the better decisions you can make about your life. And what happens is that normally letterpress printing is limited to universities or community spaces where, you know, you may have to have membership or you may have to pay. And a lot of people I know, it's difficult for them to do that. And it's like, oh, come on, print. You know, I don't care. I have more than one printing press. You know, so come try it out because you think you like it. If you try it out, you know whether you like it or not.
But if you're ready to buy it.
Well, yeah, no. I tell people when they come, if the press stops, you stop and come get me, because you probably haven't broken it. It's just that something needs to be tweaked. You know, so come get me and we'll figure it out. You know, because it's hard to break one of those presses. It can be done, but it's hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've survived so long.
Right. Yeah. And so that's what the pile of bricks. And I thought that property here was fairly inexpensive, but I wanted to be in a neighborhood. I didn't want to be in an industrial zone. And so it took a while to find something that had some space. And what I found was a 3,000 square foot building that was in the auction, which I purchased for like $1,700. But it only had half a roof. It basically had the 4 walls, and it had a lot of brick and debris. It had a lot of trash in it. And a friend of mine came by, and I was so proud. Look at what I have. You know, this is great. I'm going to turn this in. And she calmly said, it looks like a pile of bricks. And so I kept that name. And I can't wait for her to come back and say, oh, yeah. I remember when this was a pile of bricks.
Yeah,
by June 2021, we'll be in it.
Awesome. Yeah, when I visited you this past June, it was definitely more than a pile of bricks.
Right.
It had a roof.
It has a roof. It has a new floor with radiant heat.
Whoa.
This week, we're going to get new doors in.
I believe there's a toilet now.
There's a toilet. We're going to put a sink in.
Oh.
You know, I have an oven.
That's more than I can say for many New York apartments.
I have an oven, a full-size oven that I can cook, you know. You know, so yeah, we're putting the doors in, and then we have a couple more things, but we're hoping to get a certificate of occupancy this spring, and then move
And
on.
how many printers are going to be in it at one time? Like when you're all.
Well, that depends on how many people can stand my arrogance.
No, I meant like presses. How many presses?
Oh, altogether, there's going to be about 12 printing presses, and there will be three that will be two that will be devoted to visitors, maybe three that will be devoted to visitors.
Are they all platen press, or what? Like, are there different types of presses that you'll have?
Three of them will be platen presses, but the rest are cylinder presses. And for people out there who are not familiar with platen presses, a cylinder press is it's also called a flatbed press, and you can think of it as a rolling pin where you're rolling over the type to make the impression. A platen press stands up, and the bed is vertical, and there is this platen that comes with the type on it, hits it, and then it goes back again. So yeah, I will have three platen presses, but they will not be manual fed. They'll be Heidelbergs. And then all the other presses are cylinder presses. Because one of the things is in order to make a poster, a platen press can only go up to about 13 by 19. So if you want to make a poster, 16 by 24, that would have been made on a cylinder press. And so cylinder presses are the press of choice for making posters.
Are all the posters in art show made on a cylinder press?
Yes, all the posters, yes.
Good to know.
Yeah.
We have a question from Bella, and she wants to know, how would you describe your approach to social media, and how has it helped and or hindered your creative process?
Oh, social media.
I mean, you have accounts for the Pile of Bricks, for Nappygrams, and for Kennedy Prints. So you're
right. I also have it for the School of Bad Printing, which is another entity. But social media, I'm a little old to it, and I use it primarily just to put up images of the work I do. So I call it digital media. And I'm thinking I may start calling it commercial media, because that's what it's about. It is a commercial product that should be used by businesses to promote their business. So I use it to promote my business, to promote things that I'm doing, the work I'm doing, projects that I'm working on. And it allows for people, which I dislike the term followers, there's something wrong with, but it allows you to build a community, and people can kind of check in and see what you're doing. And I think that is good, because we need to have more physical communities. And these digital communities work well, especially when you may be the only printer, in the county. So you can at least associate with other printers in other parts of the world, and you can see what they're doing. So in that aspect, the dissemination of information quickly, that is an advantage of what we call social media. And I just use it. I probably underuse it, but I just use it from time to time to post things. I use more Instagram than I do Facebook, because Instagram is just really kind of about the picture itself,
Yeah. Okay, we've got a tough question. So as somebody who has a history with, say, anti-establishment sentiment, how do you feel about the level of well-deserved recognition that you're getting right now? And what does it mean for you to be, like, for us, you're the inaugural mini exhibition at our museum, but you're also, I know that you're getting a lot of attention from a lot of people lately. How does that feel, and how do you deal with that? What do you think about that?
I should go find it. It's in another room. But Duke Ellington got some award at 65. And he said, "I'm glad I didn't get it when I was young, because it would have swollen my head too much." And I think that is, I appreciate the recognition that I'm getting now. And I think that the recognition is based upon, 30 years of working, and not working to get the recognition, but working because this is what I enjoy. And, yeah, the fact that, you know, I am the inaugural mini exhibition at the Poster House Museum, that is a really big deal for me, because 2 years ago, there was no museum for posters. So we've come a long way in this country, you know, and it's like, and then, the posters that you have in your collection right now are primarily more lithos and silk screens and offset. So letterpress is beginning to make, its appearance here. And one of the problems you have is that, a lot of the letterpress posters were ephemera. They were thrown away the week, the day after the event. So it's kind of hard to come across them. But it's, I deeply appreciate the fact that the museum recognizes letterpress posters and, actively, collecting them, because that means a great deal to all the letterpress poster printers in the United States, all around the world for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, you can thank Catherine at the Library of Congress for even letting me know you existed. So we visited her before the museum started, and she was like, "There's this one guy you need to know about," and then that sent me down a rabbit hole.
Thank you, Catherine. I know she's on.
Yep. Actually, Terrence wants to know, can you speak to the difference between learning the craft in an active shop versus in an academic environment? And which is
Since I've never done it in an academic environment, yeah, I can speak to it. I can speak to it. Jokingly, I tell people I have a master's of fine arts. This is like amazing, because in 3 years for 6 semesters, never going to school more than 10 hours a week, I became a master of something. 100 years ago, you had to do it for 10 years before you became a master, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I think that both have their advantages and disadvantages. And if you are a student, or if you are a student or learner, then I would say take advantage of both of them. But the big difference in an active shop is that you're making, you're getting all this experience that makes you a printer. In an academic setting, you are doing some and making some, but you're getting experiences that make you more of a whole human or whole citizen. So, that's why you need to kind of merge these two together. And you're like, yeah, 100% of the time, 80% of the time, I'm just a printer over in this world. And, only 20% of the time, I'm a printer in the other world. So you need to merge both of them. Because to be a good printer is more than just knowing how to print and how to use the machines. You have to learn how to fix the machines. So maybe not just what we call academia at the university level. Maybe you should slide into, a community college and take a mechanics course just so you can get familiar, because the people who fix them are quickly passing away. So that knowledge has to be passed on. So it's all about, again, it's about life and experiences. The more experiences you have, the richer your life is. So both of them should take place. But I think that in an active print shop, you just get a bigger variety of work to do and more challenges.
Are there any contemporary printers that you're inspired by or that you would like to work with?
Oh, yeah. And I go and I work with them, there's a bunch of them, but most of them are poster printers. And so, yeah, I have always felt that you can always learn. The only time when you're dead, you stop learning. You don't stop teaching when you're dead, you just stop learning. That's what I think. I've never been dead, so I don't know for sure.
Learn from dead people, so I feel like you're right, at least on half of that.
So there are a lot of printers. I would go and work with any printer. I'd be we don't have a term for it, but like a sous chef, I'd just be your assistant. Yeah, because I'm going to learn something because you approach the press, you approach designing completely different than I do. So I will learn something just being there helping you and working with you.
Art wants to know, which of your posters has created the most discussion or controversy?
Boom, 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 boom. I don't think any of my posters, why would my posters create controversy?
They're innocent. They're just
oh my God. The poster that I love, that I gave it to a friend because he was doing a room, one of his walls in his apartment was just going to be covered with my posters, and I gave him this one, and he couldn't even touch it. But controversy. Oh, I think fuck you, I fuck myself.
That is a statement.
Yes, that is.
This talk is no longer rated G. Assign this to your high school class. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was the most controversial because it actually got censored.
Oh, really?
Right, from an exhibition.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Was it at a school? Like, why? Like, I can't imagine.
It was at a university.
At the university. Okay.
Yeah. I said, well, I got this post. Oh no, you can put it up. I said, okay. Said, yeah, we've had pictures of nudes here, and so that's no big. And then I came back by LA. Well, that could be a little. You don't mind taking it down? I said, I don't. Oh my goodness gracious! I was also the one that had the highest authority was the Alabama Historical Society, I think, or something like that. But they created a museum to the Freedom Riders in Montgomery, Alabama, and they were doing an exhibition, and they asked me to participate. And so one of my things I do is I print on maps. And so I had these Alabama maps, and I printed a lot of information. The text was about immigration, and the fact that at that time Alabama has passed one of the harshest immigration laws in the country, and was about just the general climate in Alabama. And they were not very positive. They would not have been chosen by the tourist department to the theme. So I get there, and they said, well, because on the maps, the governor and his wife is on picture on the map, and they showed up on the side where the text was. And they were like, so what we did is we folded it under so their pictures won't show. And I said, okay, And then a couple of years later, I got a letter requesting copies of the maps for the archives of Alabama. And so before I sent them, I tore that panel off. So they got the map without the governor's pictures on them. I think that was the most controversial. I've been censored a bunch. Yeah. What good is your work if somebody doesn't like it?
So you like it when people don't like it? Like, you like that tension?
I like it when people have to confront things that they are uncomfortable about.
Well, yeah, then, I mean, I am doing research for the show. I watched like the documentary on you, and I remember there's that moment where a bunch of people are commenting on the fact that you define yourself as a humble Negro printmaker.
Yeah.
And that's a hard word for a lot of people to grapple with. It was just a really interesting part of that documentary, because it's like I was like, do I include that in the wall text? I don't know how I feel about like a white lady using that word.
Well, see, I like the term Negro, and I think that there's a certain power to it. When I was when I was a very young person, I met this woman from Germany, and we were someplace at an event, and she asked me, did I know her husband? I said no, and she said, oh, he's that Negro man over there. And then it just struck me that Negro is used as a color, not as as we've used it for a time in the United States. And I kind of like that, like, oh, like I like that black person over there. Oh, I like that. And why? Because it is in Spanish, Negro is black, I think.
I don't speak Spanish. Does somebody in the chat speak Spanish? I know, I mean, I know it isn't French, but yeah. Well, changing gears entirely, because we have a lot of questions in the chat.
Okay.
Gary used to work in the silkscreen t-shirt industry, and he always thought that the limitations of silk screening pushed artists to more creative solutions. And do you think that the same is true for letterpress, that the limitations of the craft make you more creative?
I think that limitations make you creative, period. No matter where you are and what you're doing. When you have limits, then suddenly you have to figure out how to work within those limits. And that requires creativity. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that limitations galvanize the imagination.
Yeah.
And so, yes, and is it limited, or have we not fully explored its potential? Who is limited, like letterpress printing, or am I limited because I don't have an imagination on how to use it some other way?
No, that's that's really, we talk about that in another show we have on at the museum right now on mid-century design. It's all about grid systems. It's one of the quotes that I'm going to paraphrase, but the quote is like, the grid isn't about being rigid. It's about finding freedom in figuring out the limitations of these rules, like how far you can stretch something.
Right.
Which I actually, Susie in the chat wants to know if Swiss international style is one of your influences. I would be surprised if it is, but who knows?
No. Actually, I like Russian.
Like constructivism?
Yeah. Oh. Hold on.
You're bringing out props? Oh, yes. I was at that show.
Is it that work is just beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Swiss, yes, I enjoy the Swiss, and I think in some ways, it's probably in the work I do if someone were to take time and break it down, because I believe what happens is that there's this universality of things. Have you ever had the experience where you say, hey, I got a great idea, let's do this. And then like a day later, somebody else tells you that, or you hear about it from someone else? I just think things get into the atmosphere and people pick them up everywhere.
Oh, everyone's asking what you showed me, since they couldn't see it on the screen. It's a
book entitled Windows on the War.
Yeah, it was at the Chicago Art Institute of Chicago a few years ago. It's Windows, so it's
about big posters that they use to as propaganda.
Yeah.
Very big posters.
They're huge. I mean, they're like, think of the entire, like an 8-foot wall. Like they're really big. So Susie also wants to know, she knows that you're very interested in social justice and fighting institutionalized racism. What would you tell new artists who want to get involved in those causes? That's a very large question.
Yeah. I would tell them that they first have to recognize that they are involved in these issues. The question is, which side are you on first? And second is, what are you doing to correct the grievances? But we live in a world of duality, on and off, but it's actually, for me, it's a continuum. The question isn't are you for social justice or not for it? The question is, to what degree? And it can't be zero, but it could be infinity.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I don't even know how to segue from that. Deborah wants to know about historically Black colleges and universities. She's from Howard and she wants you to talk about them more. I know you've talked about them with me a bunch.
Right. Well, historically Black universities, and there are more than 100 of them right now in the United States, were first founded after the Civil War as to educate the formerly enslaved Africans. And for the longest time, that was the only place where Black people could go for education beyond high school. Now, my father, who was born in 1920, in his town, he couldn't go past 6th grade. After that, there was no high school. He had to go to a completely different town. And when I say 5 miles, it may have been 10 miles. And in 1930, 10 miles was much longer than it is now. So these universities were founded, and then most of them were private, and then they were state funded because of the land grant universities, and then states started funding, such as Grambling. Grambling was founded as a Negro training center, and gradually the state took it over and it became a normal college, which is a teacher's college, and then it became a full college. But here is where art departments introduce Black people to art in mass, where Blacks could go and study art and have some sort of career at it. So these institutions, fostered a lot of the visual culture that was made in Black America. And they are extremely important, not because they are Black universities, and not because they are Black universities. They are important because they are universities. And we need universities to educate the youth, because we like to live in an educated civilization. And just as a sidebar, printing was taught at many of these institutions. My neighbor took printing at Southern University in Louisiana, taught printing up until like the late 50s. You could get a degree in it and then go out and become a printer someplace.
Yeah, I think you attended a few weeks ago. Yeah, a few weeks ago now, that we had a talk with Kelly about the history of Black printing.
Yes.
In America. And I know that her research goes back to the, I think maybe 1700s or earlier. So I can't wait to see what more she does with that, because it's incredibly fascinating and largely unwritten. But another question somebody has is, have you ever refused a project? And if so, can you talk about it?
No, I've never refused a project. I get very few projects, so it's hard to refuse them. And a lot of them come from people I know. So yes, that. And then the ones of people I don't know, I probably know someone who knows that. And basically, I'm more of a word of mouth. That's how people know me. I don't have I don't go out with portfolios trying to sell my work any place. So it's basically, yes, I would say no. I have never. I can tell you that I have often wondered why I took that commission, because sometimes I think I take commissions on that are really beyond my scope, because I'm kind of a sloppy printer. It's not about the product so much as what happens to me while I'm making it. And so, like, oh, that's not really, no, it's not supposed to be nice and crisp and clean. I don't do that. So I haven't gotten anyone like to refuse yet. Most people accept what I do.
Well, one of my favorite pieces that we have from you has your handprint in pink on it that was from like a test print earlier, and then you just printed over it.
Right.
I think that those like sloppy details are what makes a lot of your pieces really interesting and great.
Well, I was thinking about that, and someone else asked me about this. But the thing is that we have been caught in this idea of perfection, and and perfection is everything the same, almost. And in the real world, everything is different, and nothing gets more perfect than the real world. So, if you imitate the real world, it helps a lot. And so each one should be unique and different, just a little off, because we're all just a little off.
No, I agree. And also, like, I know, I mean, right now, advertising posters are all done digitally and they're really crisp and everything. But if you look back at stuff from like the 1880s, 1890s that we have at the museum, like the color didn't always match up. Sometimes somebody was a little like sloppy with the registration, and that's part of what advertising was. It wasn't perfection all the time. It was functional.
Because it was fast. You weren't, you didn't have like 4 or 5 days, 4 or 5 days to do something. You can't crank them out. And some people refer to that as the mark of the maker. And I think there are people who appreciate the mark of the maker.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do. We have a question from a very important person in the room. Wants to know your thoughts on WPA poster makers and printers, and also your thoughts on Doc's Thrash.
The WPA is it was a phenomenal organization because their posters are just unbelievable. I mean, I fell in love with them the first time I saw them, and I bought the book on the WPA, and I think I bought about 10 of them so I could give them away because it's something that you need to have in your library. It's just beautiful. Don, I enjoy his litho work, and I think that there's a movement on. There's a movement. There's a campaign on to save his house, and I think that is extremely important because again, this is another artist, not just because it's a Black artist, a Black printmaker, but it's a printmaker. We have to elevate art in the community so it is part of all of the community. And I think that is one of the things that this house is doing. And his work, it doesn't appeal to me because I'm really about text. When I say it doesn't appeal to me, it isn't something that I like looking at it, but it's not, I don't see where I'm getting any influences from it, but it's just a joy to see the work and the stories that he tells.
Our first anonymous question of the evening. Why did you choose to be anonymous, person? It's a very long question, so I'm going to read the whole thing because it's quite lengthy. So, how do you decide what to print? There are so many things that need to be talked about. Flint doesn't have water. Breonna Taylor murderers are still free. People are dying by the thousands from coronavirus, and it's disproportionately Black and brown people. Muslim women in France are being penalized for wearing the hijab. So many more. How do you choose what you want to print and talk about?
Sometimes it's in the moment. I printed a couple of things about COVID. And sometimes it's just because things strike me. One of the projects that I had some time ago was commemorating the murdered children in Chicago, which hundreds of children are murdered in the United States every day, and we hear nothing about it. And so it's what strikes me and what moves me. That is the thing about having a press. You can print the things you want to. And sometimes when there is a great disturbance, it is best to wait until there is silence to make your noise, have your voice heard. And so, I try to make my voice heard all the time, on some issue. Right now, one of my big issues is, it's just the general treatment of indigenous peoples in this country, and that has to be straightened out. And so, yeah, you pick something, and you should have one subject that you devote, say, 60% of your time to. And then you have other subjects that you devote 20% of your time to. And then you have a lot of subjects that you only devote maybe 1% of your time to each one of them. But you constantly do that through the years. And that little percentage, the little change that you make with that 1% adds up. So it's, by virtue of the fact that you have started the change cannot stop. And it will continue to grow. Because I think we are on an arc as humans. We are trying to get to be better, to get to lose this negativity that defines our civilizations right now. I think we want to live in a world where there is no war, where there is no hunger. So every little step gets us there.
I don't even know how to follow up with that, because that was I know that nobody's choosing all panelists and attendees in the chat, but everybody's saying how wonderful what you're saying is, and how true what you're saying is. Looking at other questions that people have put in, Sarah was first introduced to your work when you were building books, and more sculptural pieces. Are you still doing that at all?
No, I really have stopped doing books, and that is because, again, when I moved to York, Alabama, I had no form of income, and I thought I could make some income making posters. Doing books takes a much longer time to generate revenue, and I needed revenue like in a hurry, because it takes, a well-crafted book can take up to 2 years. Yeah, they don't mess around. They are very serious.
I'm glad I'm at the Poster Museum and not the Center for Book Arts.
Yeah, and so, but posters I could crank out. The other thing is that I like posters because they kind of democratize art for me, because their prices are such that just about 80% of the people in this country can afford one. Yeah. And so I kind of stopped doing books, but I want to go back. I want to do some books a little bit different than what you normally see. So, in the coming years, I will probably start doing books again.
You heard it here first, folks. Actually, that democratizing brings up another question somebody has, which they're interested in your belief in multiples and the importance you put on distributing your work and allowing everyone and anyone who wants access to your work to have it. Is the viewer or the person that receives any of your prints as important to you as the work itself?
Yes, they are as important to me as the work itself. One, if they want this piece that I've created, then we have identified on that level. And so I think that individual just, help strengthen my belief in humanity, and I probably do the same for them. And I personally think that when you make something, you leave a part of you with it. There's something that in the making, because you're transforming these materials, and these materials are transforming you, you leave something there. And people who pick up the work either feel it or see it. And so again, you're on this communications going on, which helps to build the world that we want to actually live in. I believe that everybody wants to be in a state of happiness. and that we should work for a world where everybody can obtain that.
You talked earlier about like that you did your most controversial piece, but do you have just a favorite piece that you've done?
A favorite piece that, yeah, I did. I like Always Choose Happy.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
Like
I
that.
like that. It's very simple and it really looks good because it's in big, tall letters, which I really like.
Oh, wait,
I like
I
all.
haven't asked the obvious question, wood type or metal type?
What's that?
Which do you prefer?
Wood type and large metal type. As a friend of mine said, 36 point is for me is like 12 point for someone who does text. So I like big type, yeah.
Well, they need to be able to read it across the room.
That's the whole point of it. That's why you do posters, so people can read them across the room.
Exactly. Alan wants to know, what's the most difficult poster you've done?
The most difficult poster I've done. That's interesting. Probably the first poster because I didn't know what I was doing.
Wait, what was the first poster?
Well, first poster, again, it was that Emory poster. That was the first. I did one or two posters, and it's kind of hard to say. I did some posters in the late 90s, but no more than about 10. And then it was more defined by fine printing than posters itself. But I think I'm doing a poster right now that has, I think it's going to have 10 different passes through the press. And a lot of stuff has to be changed. The form has to be changed 4 times. So that is the one that it has my attention right now.
Wait, is that a commissioned piece or are you doing that for you?
I'm kind of doing it to see how it gets done. You know,
what's the most you've ever put, most passes you've ever done on a press before?
On one poster, the most passes were 7.
Oh, so this is you're going full hog. You're like,
right.
Okay. Catherine wants to know, is Citizen Printer one of your most recent works?
Yeah, this is going up on the pile of bricks. I have a pile of bricks, and I have these what used to be windows that are covered, and so I'm going to start putting. I'm going to start wheat pasting my work up there, and so right now this is going to be in one of the windows.
What are you making? Are you making your
Citizen? What's that?
Are you making your own wheat paste when you wheat paste them?
I think I'm going to start making it. Yeah, yeah. A little flour, a little water, all's good.
Oh, yeah. We have 2 questions that basically cover the same ground. Lorena wants to know what brings you joy these days, and another person from our education department wants to know what your practices of self-care are right now. So I think they dovetail nicely.
What brings me joy? Printing brings me joy right now. Yeah, it is so sweet to put ink on paper. And so that has been my and today was a really good day too. I did some stuff that turned out really nice. And what does my self-care help? Well, because of Corona, I don't go any place other than to my space to print and the pile of bricks to work and grocery shopping. I just sleep and print. I try to stay happy. I try to stay upbeat. I think that has a lot to do with your physical health too. Yeah, I haven't been to a spa in my life. And so
not all they're cracked up to be, I promise.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, but I think that printing brings me a level of calm and comfort that, people who meditate get. And so I feel good. Yeah.
Alan would like to know that you should say something nice to your mother because she's watching. Hi.
Hello, Mommy. Hi. My mother's watching. Hi. She's 96 years old.
Your mom's in the documentary. I love her.
Yeah, you know, I spent the best years of my life getting her to the place where she is.
Don't know that I could say the same thing about my mother, but yes. Marie wants to know if you found any more Cooper Black type, which actually, I have a question. What's your favorite typeface? I'm going to guess it's Cooper Black, but that's just a guess.
Yeah, Cooper Black, and I like Franklin Gothic. And I like all typefaces, but Cooper Black and Franklin Gothic look really good on posters for me. No, I haven't found any more, but I'm still looking. And I don't know what I'm going to do when it's gone, but we'll figure that out.
Stephen wants to know, he says that your process is so intuitive. How do you know when the print is done?
Oh, that's a very good, it's done. That's all I know. You know, I don't know how I know when it's done, to be quite candid with you. Normally what happens is that I know for the 12.5 by 19, about 4 passes through the press is about all you can get before it gets to get really muddy and, you know, you can't make anything out. And so that is the limiting thing, I guess you would say, how I would know, because I know I can only take it through 4 times. Because I do want some legibility in my work.
Although I was just at the Center for Book Arts, and that Rhythm is the Breath of Dance poster is the, we had to take the camera underneath the poster to see what it said.
Yeah, I like doing that too. You know, I like printing black on black, you know, like yellow on yellow, because then it, you know, you really have to study it.
Anne wants to know, in terms of exhibiting, do you enjoy seeing your posters in one type of venue more than others? She's thinking about an exhibition she saw of yours at the Brooklyn Public Library. And how do you feel about your work being in different kinds of settings and institutions?
I believe that one of the things I like about printing is that you're doing multiples. That means I can put them in places that people would not put a single painting. I really like having my work in libraries. I would like to just have it exclusively in libraries if possible. And after COVID, we'll see what happens. And I like having them in coffee houses, you know, in beauty salons, any place, you know, it's just, you know, if someone wants to put them up on the wall, I'm like, yeah, I like it there. Because people will see it, and someone who sees it will like it. And to make one person happy just for a little bit of time is a wonderful thing.
Where was the first place that your pieces were exhibited?
The first exhibition I had was in a bookstore in Chicago, Crocs and Bertano, I think. And it was an exhibition of 62 children that had been murdered in Chicago.
How did they find you to do that exhibition?
I just did it because I have a printing press.
Yeah, but did you go to them and say, I want to exhibit my work, or did they seek you out?
Oh, it was like one of those, I always used to go up there and look in the art, and Henry, I can't think of his last name, was the art book dealer. And we were having a conversation. I told him I printed. He said, well, you want to have an exhibition here? Because I do, you know, we do artist exhibition here. And I said, yeah. And so I went home, and that Sunday there was an article in the Tribune about these children under the age of 15 that had been murdered. And it struck me that so many in Chicago, you know, under 15, so many children were being murdered. And it was like, you know, something should be done other than this article. And so I did this wall piece. Yeah.
How did the venue react to the content of those pieces?
It was, according to the staff at the library, it was very shocking. Yeah, because it was put up in a square. and each card I think was about 9 inches. So it was, it was like 8 across and 8 down, something like that. So it was massive.
What were on each panel? Were they names or were they?
The name of the child, the age, and how they were murdered.
Yeah, that's pretty intense for
Yeah.
any of you. If there's one thing that you want people to walk away from when they view your work, be it at a museum or a library or in a coffee shop or just in somebody's home, is there one thing that you want someone to walk away feeling or responding to in your work?
I would like to have them walk away feeling good about themselves. Like I'm like happy to be me because I get to have experiences like this.
Yeah, I mean, I will say visiting your shop during a pandemic was probably I felt pretty great after that. So we have about 15 minutes left. I've gone through my staff's questions. Does anyone else want to ask Amos anything while we have these last few minutes with Amos? Oh, what's your favorite one-line poem? Asks Leanne.
I don't have a favorite one-line poem.
I don't have a favorite poem.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't really. There's a poem that I like, but I haven't been able to find it.
Somebody thought that your first exhibit was in Gary.
That was my first exhibit in a library. Yeah.
Some anonymous person wants to know, how important is it for you to personally mind your P's and Q's?
That's a little pun. I need to mind all my characters. As I misspelled okra one time. It has 4 characters in it. Okay.
That's a hard word to misspell.
Yes. So I need.
How did you misspell okra?
I think it was ORKA.
Yeah, that's not. That's orca.
Yeah. Yeah. Printed 100 of them. Somebody came in and said, that's misspelled. I said, oh. So I printed 100.
Mark wants to know, who are your other heroes and influences in general?
Heroes and influences. I like Ella Baker. She's a very remarkable woman. Joanne Robertson is another woman that I really admire. And, yeah, I think everyone in some respect is my hero because everyone has something to offer to me, something that they want to share with me. And I think that that's what really makes people heroes.
When you're working, do you listen to music of any kind? And if so, what do you listen to?
I listened to, when I was in down south, I would listen to what's called Southern Soul, but it's kind of hard to find up here because they still had small radio stations in some towns. And, but up here, I just, I have a music player and whatever's on my computer, I just download a bunch of stuff. But I listen to just about anything. If I am doing certain work, I will make a playlist. And I forgot what the project was, but I did a whole playlist of music associated with the civil rights. It may have been working on Rosa Parks at one time, associated with the civil rights movement. And that's why I did that. Yeah.
Another member of staff asks, as a formal and informal mentor to a lot of people, do you have an approach or philosophy for mentorship?
Be willing to learn from the people who come to you. Listen and learn.
Do you think of yourself as a poet ever?
No.
Where is the first place you want to go when it's safe to travel?
Oh, that's a good question. I never thought about that. Where would I want to travel? Probably to the pile of bricks. That's the first place, yeah. But to leave the city, I really don't know. Because it's going to be a long time before it's safe for me to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, apparently today is the 65th anniversary of Rosa Parks on the bus.
Yes, that was brought to my attention earlier today. Yeah.
Well, Tom wants
She
to
was
know.
arrested.
Yeah, Tom wants to know if you will put your Rosa Parks playlist on Spotify.
I don't deal with Spotify. I am really computer illiterate for someone who spent 20 years in the computer industry.
Do you ever collaborate with other artists or printers? And if so, what's the collaboration process like that differs from your regular process?
I don't know if I ever. I work with other people, collaborate. No, I haven't done anything where I will send them 10 things and they will send me, do something and they send it back and I do that. I've never done anything like that. And I just kind of work by myself. Yeah. I haven't done people come and work in my shop, but I don't consider that a collaboration. It's just they using the equipment.
So you never do like an exquisite corpse thing between you and another?
I did one as a project where maybe there were like 60 printers involved, but never like between, only one other person or something like that. No, I've never done any work like that. Yeah.
What is your favorite press and does it have a name?
Well, the press that I work on the most, I work on two presses the most. One is called Gray, and it's Vandercook SB15. And the other one is called Black, and it's a Heidelberg 10x15. Yeah.
Another person wants to know, how do we go about making printmaking more accessible to members of the BIPOC community?
By having more art teachers. We need to have better funding of the arts, and that's how we make it happen. And then we can have, print shops in recreational areas, not only schools, and not just, these community print centers. And that's what we should work for. But in the interim, there are ways that you can print without having all the heavy equipment. And so we just need to have printers go out into the community and demo so people can know about it.
Well, yeah, if you hadn't visited Williamsburg on that particular day at that particular time, your life would be completely different.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What will be your first project when the pile of bricks is complete?
My first project when the pile of bricks is complete is going to be a big poster. I just don't know what's going to be on it. I think I'm going to do a big poster and it's going to say public citizen. Because no one ever talks about the public citizen, but everybody talks about the private citizen.
Yeah. Actually, Alan wants to know what's the largest poster you've printed and what is the largest poster you can print in the future?
The largest poster I printed is about 28 by 40. And in the future, that'll probably still be the largest that I can print on a single sheet unfolded, okay? So I could take a bigger sheet and fold it and run it through the press, but technical things. So yeah, about 28 by 40 will be as big as it gets. It's just that the speed of the work will be a little faster.
Well, is the purpose of the pile of bricks so that you're not on the road so much, so you spend more time on the press and then people come to you and not you go to them? That's a question that's not from me.
No, the purpose of the pile of bricks is to have a place where people can experience letterpress printing, because that is going to change their life, and I think it's going to change it in a positive way. So it's something that I can offer them.
Do you have a favorite poster from poster history?
Oh, yeah. The I Am a Man poster, because it was so simple and so straightforward. However, in poster, or if we were to push it to branding, the Am I Your Brother from the British anti-slave, which some people think is the first, mass advertising campaign of its kind. That would be, and both of them kind of have a connection with the text. Yeah, so those two.
What is your favorite non-poster thing you've made?
My two sons.
Are they watching?
One is.
At least one?
Yeah.
What have you found is the best way to start a conversation and change in local communities? Example, like e.g. workshops, exhibitions, etc.
I think that the best way is to be an example of what you want and to utilize all the resources that are available to you to make that happen. If you want to activate change, you become the change. And that's a saying that, makes a lot of sense. That because if you act the way you want, if you use the resources, what the individual said, exhibitions or something else, both of them can be, like I want to be as comprehensive as possible. So bring that change, take your change out into the world and activate it.
Well, I'm going to end it with a question from Ben because it's an uplifting question and I like it. And he wants to know, what do you like best about Detroit?
Detroit is an urban area with a rural feel. And that's what I like best about it. And it's going to change, but it has a lot of vacant land that you can, it's just vacant land. And it's very interesting to be in an urban area with so much vacant land. And I think that's one of the things I like about it. It's not crowded, although there are 700,000 people, a little less than 700,000 people here. It's very, very open. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I when I was there this summer, I was like, should I move to Detroit? It's pretty great. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I always love spending time talking with you, and I feel like everybody else had a great time because the chat is on fire. Our events never have this much like positive feedback happening while we're talking.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody who showed up tonight. I deeply appreciate it. And we are making things happen as a community.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We have a zillion other talks planned for the rest of the year in 2021. And if you want to learn more about letterpress, we're doing a talk with Bound, which is part of the South Street Seaport Museum in a few weeks. And Amos's show is up until January, so please come and see it if you're in New York. It is awesome. Although even if you can't make it between now and then, 4 of Amos's pieces are on permanent display at the museum, so you'll always be able to see a little bit